Join the conversation by calling in at 476-1045 or tweet into the show at 1045 The Team. It's Big Board Sports with Roger Weiland on 1045 The Team.
John Tayler, Sports Illustrated, drops by for a few minutes. We talk baseball, we talk Mets, we talk Jacob deGrom, and really lately has not been the starting pitching at all. In fact, Vargas was pretty good last night for 5 innings. It's been the lack of hitting, second straight game. They've only been able to muster up 3 hits. They've now lost 5 in a row, and we're starting to wonder if maybe perhaps we write this team off right now. I'm not ready to do that. We'll ask John Tayler if he is. Good morning, John. Roger Weiland and Brian Mariano, who's filling in for Chris Honorado this morning here on ESPN Radio in Albany. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
We're good, John. Appreciate a few minutes. What is your take on this New York Mets team right now? We've said for a while, if you get by, Syndergaard and deGrom, you got nothing after that, starting pitching wise. But the starters have been fine. The bullpen has been awful, and the Mets aren't hitting at all. They've lost 5 in a row. Are you writing them off right now?
I don't know about writing them off, but I certainly don't see them as a contender right now. I mean, you look since that 11-1 start, they've gone something like 16-30, which is I believe a 56-win pace for a full season. Obviously, they're not. I don't think they're that bad. It's really, really hard to be that bad. But this certainly feels like a team that got hot right out of the gate and is just kind of sinking to its true talent level, which was truthfully always going to be around like 78 to 82 wins. This was a team that was built in the offseason without a whole lot of upside, without a particularly high ceiling. I think it was more just trying to lock in a somewhat higher floor than last year. And you can see that because when you make signings like Todd Frazier and Jay Bruce and Jason Vargas, you're not really aiming for a particularly high level. You're just kind of aiming for competence and hoping that higher variant performance from your better players will kind of make up the difference. And when that doesn't happen, when you have something like, Cespedes on the DL for a while, or when you have, granted they're getting that out of deGrom, or when your bullpen is not performing the way it is, then this is kind of the expected result. A roughly 500 team, which is what they are now. And I think the bigger problem for the Mets, even more than that, though, is that the 3 teams ahead of them in the NL East are all probably better. The Nationals are better. The Braves have a better offense. The Phillies just seem like a better team overall. So I would say the Mets will probably end up finishing the year somewhere in that 78 to 82 win area, but I just don't think in the end that's going to be enough for them. And it certainly doesn't seem like they really have what it takes to pass any of those 3 teams in the standings.
John, you wrote about deGrom. How special of a pitcher is he?
Man, he has really jumped that level into being one of the top 10 guys in the league right now. I mean, he's always been, since his debut, really, he's just been great, but this is something else what we're seeing right now, which makes it all the more the shame that the Mets seemingly just blow every one of his wins. Not that pitcher wins mean anything necessarily, but the fact that they have a losing record in his starts, despite the fact he has an ERA below 2, I think, right now, I believe somewhere around there. But what he's doing is really something else. He's got the velocity, he's got the control, he's got the command, he's got the good off-speed stuff, he's got the good breaking stuff. He really has kind of jumped into that, pantheon's not the right word, but he's up there, in that same conversation as, the Scherzers and the Kershaws and the guys of that level. I really do think, Scherzer is more likely than not going to win the NL Cy Young, but I think deGrom is going to make it a pretty close race throughout the rest of the season.
John Tayler, SportsIllustrated.com. You can follow him on Twitter at @JATaylor. And John, looking at this Mets rotation and especially this team overall, the trade deadline's coming up. What do you see the Mets doing at the trade deadline? I know a lot of people have mentioned the possibility of trading Jacob deGrom, but do you see them moving any one of these big pieces?
Big pieces, no. I don't really. I know deGrom is getting closer and closer to free agency, but I feel like he's going to be one of those guys the Mets are going to hang on to up until the point where they know that they cannot work an extension out with him, and maybe that's his final season of team control. I don't know, but it feels like moving him would be a very, very drastic thing to do, especially because I think they would probably do better moving him in the offseason when they'd have more teams involved and more time to hammer something out. If things keep going the way they're going, I could see maybe they move Jay Bruce for what feels like the umpteenth time. Maybe they explore moving Juris Familia and seeing if, because there are plenty of teams out there that could use some relief help, and Familia is probably the best reliever they have on their roster. I don't think they're going to make a move one way or the other that's going to involve any particularly big names. I think a guy like Bruce or Familia is probably as big as it gets. If they're in contending position, though, it's kind of hard to see them buying because this is a team that didn't want to spend more than Jason Vargas money in the offseason. I don't really see how that changes during the season, especially if you consider that more likely than not, they're not going to be in any real solid, good contending position.
John, where do you rank DeGrom right now amongst pitchers in the National League? And you mentioned Max Scherzer. How about last night? Struck out all three batters in the 6th inning on 9 pitches.
Yeah, that's his second immaculate inning. I don't think any pitcher ever has had 2 immaculate innings. It's really something. So, I mean, I think Scherzer is far and away your number one in terms of the national. Maybe not far and away, but I think he's number one in the National League. He's a strikeout master. The crazy number to me from last night with him was the 99 pitches, 81 for strikes. I mean, that's absolutely nonsense, you know. But also, I mean, you probably got to talk too about Aaron Nola, who doesn't have the same kind of strikeout numbers certainly that DeGrom and that Scherzer do, but has been very, very good. Gets a lot of ground balls, gets a lot of soft contact. I think, you know, those are probably your 3 top pitchers in the National League right now. I mean, obviously, a healthy Clayton Kershaw is there too, but we have not seen a healthy Clayton Kershaw this year, so I'm kind of hesitant to include him in that. But, I mean, just by wins above replacement, Nola is number one, and in the National League, it's Nola, DeGrom, and Scherzer 1, 2, and 3. So, you know, I think that's probably your top group at the moment, and those are probably at the end of the season, barring injury, going to be your 3 Cy Young finalists in that league.
And John, one more for me. I mean, the 2 best teams in baseball, the Red Sox and the Yankees. I mean, is there any reason to believe that these 2 teams won't continue along the same lines that we're seeing right now with Boston at 42-19? The Yankees are at 39-18. Guys can go into slumps. Pitchers can go into slumps. It really doesn't matter. There's so much depth on both these teams. Their lineup is both lineups are phenomenal. But what a year so far by the Red Sox and the Yankees. Do you think both of them will keep up the pace?
Maybe not exactly this pace, because I think they're both right now on pace to win something along the lines of 110 to 115 games, and that's probably going to slow down at some point. They're going to run into some injuries, like you said. They're going to run into some slumps. You know, but no, these are 2 very good teams. I don't see any reason why they won't be the top 2 teams in the American League and probably in all of baseball when the records are all said and done. I think the one thing you probably have to worry about for both is now you're seeing that they're with injuries, that their depth is being tested. The Yankees losing Jordan Montgomery is not a fatal blow by any stretch of the imagination, but it hurts. You know, he was the best option at their 5th starter role. He really robs them of some starter depth, kind of forces them now to stick with Domingo Germán in the 5th starter role, or to go out and try to get someone at the deadline. And the truth is, there aren't a whole lot of great starting pitching options that are going to be available this summer. Not a lot of teams have that available in spades. And you see with the Red Sox too, you know, that their depth. You know, they're having some issues with Rafael Devers at third base. Dustin Pedroia briefly came back and is back on the disabled list. So I think that's, if anything's going to slow these 2 teams down, it's probably going to be injuries and depth. But otherwise, no, I think these are the 2 best teams in baseball, which I imagine is to the immense delight of Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball that they get this, that in their wildest dreams, that they get this rivalry back in the playoffs too.
John, one more from me as well, and one of the stories coming out of spring training was Vlad Guerrero Jr. and him coming through with his father and all that he's done for baseball. And looking at this kid going through spring training and now, how good can this kid be, especially with the shadow of his father? Does that really bother him at all? And how good can he be being as young as he is?
Having talked to him, it doesn't really seem like being the son of Vladimir Guerrero is a thing that really gives him any issues or problems. He just seems to be fully. I mean, when you hit as well as he does, it almost doesn't matter who your dad is. You know, if you're that talented, if you have that much skill, who cares? Obviously the numbers he's putting up in Double A are not the numbers he's going to put up in the majors, but his hit tool, his raw power, they are both far and away. You know, they would be 90th percentile already in Major League Baseball. He can hit right now in the majors. There's zero question about that. And no talent evaluator you talk to will tell you differently. I think just the question with Guerrero is the defense and kind of where you put him. He's a third baseman now, but he's pretty big for the position and pretty, average at it. but certainly that kind of matters less when you hit as well as he does. I think, he's a future All-Star in the making, a future MVP caliber player. The way he hits guarantees his success. I don't worry one bit about, whether or not he can play. He can play in the majors right now. It's just the Blue Jays, for whatever reasons, be they financial or if they're actually development reasons for, defense, don't really seem eager to test him. But he can play in the majors right now. There's no question about that.
John Tayler, Sports Illustrated. Great work as always, and we'll keep in touch down the road. But thank you for a few minutes here this morning on Big Board Sports in Albany.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.